2,000 years ago, someone built a computer. Not a metaphor. An actual machine. 30 bronze gears that could predict eclipses and track the planets across the sky. And then the entire idea vanished for 1,400 years. That is just one of these 8 objects. A temple older than farming, older than writing, older than the wheel. Walls of stone fitted so tightly you cannot slide a knife between them. Concrete that has stood for 2,000 years and heals its own cracks. A weapon that burned on water whose recipe was lost forever. A blade we forgot how to forge. A clay jar that works like a battery 18 centuries before electricity. And a cup that changes colour because it's laced with particles smaller than you can see. Every one of these is real. Everyone was made by people with no machines, no electricity, no modern science, and everyone asks the same impossible question. How? Some of these we've cracked. Some are still being argued over right now, and a few are gone for good. We're counting them down from strange to genuinely impossible. And stay till the end, because number 1 still doesn't make sense. Number 8. The cup that shouldn't change colour. In the British Museum, there's a small Roman drinking cup made around the 4th century, carved with a struggling figure tangled in vines. It's beautiful, but that's not why scientists obsess over it. Light it from the front and the glass glows a soft jade green. Shine a light through it from behind and the entire cup turns a glowing blood red. For centuries, nobody understood how. Then researchers ground off a tiny fragment, put it under an electron microscope, and found the answer. The glass is studded with microscopic particles of gold and silver, ground down to around 50 nanometers across. Smaller than you can see, smaller than a wavelength of light. Those particles scatter light differently depending on its direction, and that flips the colour. In other words, this is nanotechnology. Real functional nanotechnology, made 1,600 years ago. We understand the science today. The part we can't explain is the craftsmanship. To get this effect, the gold and silver had to be spread almost perfectly evenly through the glass. At a scale Roman artisans had no way to see, measure, or even know existed. Almost certainly it was a 1 in a million accident with a contaminated batch of glass, which is exactly why only one cup like this survives in the entire world. They got it right once and could never do it again. But a colour-changing cup is just strange. The next one looks like someone broke the timeline. Number 7. The 2,000-year-old battery. In the 1930s near Baghdad, archaeologists uncovered a small clay jar, around 2,000 years old. Inside was a copper cylinder, and inside that, an iron rod. On its own, that's just an odd little container. But here's the strange part. Fill that jar with an acidic liquid, vinegar or grape juice, and it generates electricity, about 1 volt. That's not a guess. People have built replicas, and they work, which means that, in theory, someone in the ancient Middle East may have built a working battery almost 1,800 years before Alessandro Volta invented it in 1800. So what was it for? The famous theory is electroplating, using a faint current to coat cheap objects in a thin layer of gold or silver. It's a tantalizing idea. But I'm going to be honest with you because most videos won't be. A lot of archaeologists think it probably wasn't a battery at all, maybe just a vessel for storing sacred scrolls with the metal cylinder simply holding the rolled papyrus. And here's the unsettling part. We have the object. We can hold it, test it, replicate it, and we still genuinely don't know which it is. An ancient power source, or a coincidence that happens to make electricity. 2,000 years later, the jar simply won't tell us. That one we can argue about. This next one we genuinely cannot reproduce, no matter how hard we try. Number 6, the fire that water couldn't stop. Imagine you're a sailor attacking Constantinople in the 7th century. Your fleet closes in at war, and the defenders open up with something out of a nightmare. A jet of liquid fire sprays across the water, clinging to your ships, your sails, your skin. You throw yourself into the sea to put it out, and the fire keeps burning. On the water, it will not go out. This was Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's most terrifying weapon. Pumped through bronze siphons, sticking to everything it touched and unquenchable by water. By some accounts, water made it worse. It saved Constantinople from conquest more than once and made the Byzantine navy almost untouchable for centuries, and we have absolutely no idea how to make it, because the recipe was one of the most closely guarded state secrets in history. It was known only to the emperors and a single family of engineers who produced it. It was never written down in full, and when the empire finally crumbled, the secret crumbled with it. Modern historians have guesses, some mix of petroleum or naphtha, pine resin, sulfur, maybe quicklime, but no one has ever reproduced something that matches every description. A liquid fire, sprayed under pressure, that burns on the surface of the sea. This isn't a mystery we've half solved. This one is simply gone. So that's a technology we lost. Now here's one we forgot, and only just clawed back. Number 5. The steel we forgot how to make. For over 1,000 years, the deadliest blades in the world came out of the Middle East, Damascus steel. You'd know it instantly by the surface, rippling, flowing patterns like water frozen in metal. But it wasn't just beautiful. These blades were legendarily sharp and incredibly tough, flexible enough not to shatter, hard enough to hold a savage edge. Crusaders came home with stories of swords that sliced through their own. The steel was forged from special ingots called woots, made in India and Sri Lanka. And then, around the 1700s, it stopped working. The blacksmiths lost the knack. Damascus steel vanished. Now, modern science has partly caught up. Under a microscope, genuine old blades reveal something incredible. Carbon nanotubes and nanowires woven into the metal, formed by tiny trace elements like vanadium in that specific ore. But here's what should stop you. Understanding why it worked did not let us bring it back. For roughly 2 centuries, the finest metallurgists on Earth tried to recreate true Damascus steel and failed. The exact ore had run out, the trace ingredients were gone, and the smiths who knew the process had taken it to their graves. A technology that armed warriors for 1,000 years was lost so completely that all our modern science could do was explain a ghost. But if a forgotten metal is impressive, wait until you see what they did with concrete. Number 4. The concrete that heals itself. Walk into the Pantheon in Rome and look up. Above you is the largest unreinforced concrete dome on Earth, and it has stood intact for nearly 2,000 years. Meanwhile, the concrete overpass near your house will need replacing within 50. How? Modern concrete cracks, water gets in, and it slowly falls apart. Roman concrete did the opposite. Some of their structures, especially sea walls built directly in salt water, actually got stronger over time, battered by waves for 2,000 years and growing more durable. We knew the Romans mixed volcanic ash with lime and seawater, but the full answer only came together in 2023 when MIT researchers zeroed in on tiny white chunks in the concrete called lime clasts. They act like built-in repair kits. When a crack forms and water seeps in, it reacts with these clasts and grows new material that seals the crack back up. The concrete literally heals itself. And yes, now we understand it. But sit with how strange this is. The Romans, with no chemistry, no microscopes, no concept of molecules, accidentally invented self-healing concrete. A technology we are only now, 2,000 years later, trying to copy, and still can't reproduce as cheaply or as durably as they did. They were better at this than we are. That's chemistry. This next one is pure physical impossibility. Stone fitted like a machine. Number 3. The stones that fit like a machine. High in the Peruvian Andes sits a fortress called Sacsayhuaman. Its walls are built from limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fitted together with no mortar at all. Not stacked, fitted. The joints are so precise the stones cut into strange interlocking curves that you cannot slide a sheet of paper into the gaps. These walls have survived earthquakes that flattened the buildings the Spanish later stacked on top of them. And a few hundred miles away in Bolivia is a site that's stranger still. Puma Punku. The stones here are andesite and diorite, some of the hardest rock there is, carved with razor-straight edges, perfect right angles, identical H-shaped blocks, and clean, drilled holes. They look machined. They look like they came out of a modern factory, except they were made by a culture with no iron tools and no written language. To be fair, this is one where the honest answer is probably incredible skill, not aliens. Master masons, using harder stones and bronze, grinding with sand and water over generations, can achieve astonishing precision. We've recreated some of these techniques, but the hard questions don't go away. How did they move 100-ton blocks across mountains with no wheel and no draft animals strong enough? How did they hit that level of standardized, repeatable, machine-like precision entirely by hand? We have plausible answers. We do not have certain ones. And standing in front of those walls, plausible doesn't feel like nearly enough, and that's hard enough to explain. The next site shouldn't exist at all. Number 2, the temple that rewrote history. Here's what history class taught for a century. First, humans learned to farm. Farming let them settle down and build villages. Settled life eventually produced cities and religion and monuments. Civilization, in that order. Farming first, temples last. Then we dug up Göbekli Tepe. In southeastern Turkey, archaeologists uncovered massive stone pillars, T-shaped, some over 5 meters tall and weighing more than 10 tons, arranged in great rings and carved with foxes, scorpions, vultures, and snakes. And then they dated it. Göbekli Tepe is around 11,500 years old. Let that land. It is older than Stonehenge by 6,000 years, older than the pyramids by 7,000. It was built before writing, before pottery, before metal tools, before the wheel, and before farming. This was built by hunter-gatherers, people with stone tools who had not yet planted a single field. That should be impossible. Organising hundreds of people to quarry, carve and raise 10-ton pillars takes planning, coordination and a reason. The things we assumed only appeared after farming and cities. Göbekli Tepe flips the entire story on its head. It suggests the temple may have come first, that the urge to gather and build something sacred might be what pushed humanity towards civilization, not the other way around. And then, for reasons nobody understands, the people who built it deliberately buried the whole thing under tons of earth, which is part of why it survived for us to find, and part of why it remains one of the most quietly mind-bending places on the planet. Which finally brings us to the single most out-of-place object ever found. Number 1. The computer that was 2,000 years early. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera found an ancient shipwreck. Among the statues and treasure, they hauled up an unremarkable lump of corroded bronze, about the size of a shoebox. For decades it sat in a museum, largely ignored. It looked like junk. It was the most sophisticated object of the entire ancient world. When scientists finally X-rayed and CT scanned it, layer by layer, they found something that should not exist. More than 30 precision-cut bronze gears meshed together in an intricate mechanism. It's an analog computer. You turned a hand crank and it calculated the positions of the sun and the moon. It tracked the moon's phases, even accounting for the fact that its orbit isn't a perfect circle. It predicted solar and lunar eclipses years in advance. It even tracked the 4-year cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. And it was built around 2,100 years ago. Here's what makes it almost unbelievable. Nothing of remotely comparable complexity appears anywhere in the historical record again for about 1,400 years, not until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. It is as if someone built a working laptop in the Bronze Age, and then the entire idea was forgotten for over a millennium. We now understand what it does. What we can't explain is the rest. Who designed it? How advanced was the lost tradition of engineering behind it, because a device this refined was clearly not someone's first attempt? And how did that knowledge vanish so completely that it left almost no trace at all? The Antikythera mechanism isn't just a mystery of how it was made. It's proof that something this brilliant can be invented, and then completely erased. So, what do all 8 of these have in common? A few we've actually solved. The cup, the concrete, the steel. One is still argued over, was the battery. One is gone forever. Greek fire. And 2 of them quietly rewrote what we thought we knew about the ancient world. But the real lesson runs underneath all of them. We love to picture the people of the past as primitive, simpler, dumber versions of us. They were not. They were every bit as intelligent, as curious and as inventive as we are. They just worked with different tools. And the most unsettling thing these 8 objects prove isn't that ancient people were smart. It's that knowledge can be lost, that brilliance can be buried or kept secret or simply forgotten until it disappears as if it never existed. Entire technologies have fallen out of human memory, which makes you wonder just how much more we've lost that we don't even know to look for. If you want more stories about the things history can't quite explain, subscribe. There are far more of them than you'd think, and the next one is waiting right here. See you next time.